Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of Simple Business Stewardship. I'm Lauren Rilling, your host and your fractional CFO for your small business. And today I'm going to answer a question that I received just the other day about business expenses. I think business expenses are a really hot topic right now because as we are experiencing economically, a lot of business owners are trying to figure out how to save money, how to reduce expenses, and while I think it's always great to take a look at your expenses and see how you can streamline, see if there's waste or excess going on, or see if you can do things more efficiently to drive those profits up, that's not a bad thing. So I want you to do that. However, there is a counterbalance to it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, sometimes it's really easy to just overspend, right? But the opposite can also be true. And so I want to dig into this mindset a little bit and reframe the way that you're looking at your business expenses. So I got this question and it was, okay, I feel like my money that's in my business account is sort of like all this money that I've earned. I don't want to spend any of it on expenses because I want to pay myself. I want to pay my family. And this is money that I've earned, right? And so I feel like spending any of it is is almost like a waste or like I'm afraid to spend. And so here's what I how I would answer that and how I want you to start thinking about business expenses. Because there is this balance that we want to achieve between not spending too much, but also not being afraid to invest in those things that are going to drive our business forward, and to do it in a smart way with boundaries and guardrails. I think that's the thing that whenever we hear people talking about, hey, you've got to spend money to make money. I do not love that phrase. You've got to invest in yourself and your dreams are worth it. It's not that those things are not true in a sense, but I find that that kind of messaging has been used in such a manipulative way to get business owners to feel that sense of desperation or fear of missing out. And so they go and spend all this money because their dreams are worth it, or because you've got to spend money to make money. So I guess this is just what I have to do. And I want to just reframe the whole conversation around spending money on your business. So I've got this notebook here because I'm going to show you like how I picture this in my brain. Okay. It's like this. On this side, we have, and I'm sorry, this is going to show up backwards for you, personal expenses, like your personal finances. On this side, we have the business finances, and they do not cross. Okay. There is one little inlet. It's a door that opens and closes, and that is paying yourself from the business to your personal finances and to your personal account. And like other than that, like they do not mix, they do not cross. They are separated. Okay. So your processes and your decisions that you make with your personal finances, that's on this side. The business finances and your business goals, that's on this side. And I know that I talk a lot about how you've got to set your business goals in light of your personal goals. This is all true. But when we're talking about managing your money, we're talking about totally different processes for making these decisions. So in your personal finances, if you make a budget, you make a zero-based budget where you know that you've got a certain amount of money coming in every month, and you go, all right, if we have X amount of money coming in over the next 30 days, how much money are we going to spend on these different things? Okay. So you've got your expenses, right? You've got your bills, you've got food to buy, you've got gas to put in the car, you've got maybe clothing. Maybe if you're like me, your kids grow out of their shoes every 6 weeks, right? And so, okay, whatever those things are. Then you also have some discretionary things like, okay, what do we want for our eating out budget? What do we want for our fun money or entertainment? But what are the other things? We've got giving, of course, and we've also got saving and investing. Now, when you translate that principle to your business, you don't just want to think about your business budget as merely your expenses that you have to just, like your bills, right? Because when you're doing a personal budget, if all you did was list out your bills, you go, okay, this is how much I have for my bills, and then everything else, I guess I can just sort of spend. That's not an effective budget. You want to be intentional with how much money, what percentage or what amount from your total income that you are dedicating, pre-committing to saving and investing. It's the same principle when it comes to your business budget. So you have certain needs, whether that is your cost of goods sold, like your materials and the labor that it's required to fulfill those products or services. So you've got those, and then you've got certain overhead expenses that like I pay for Restream, right, so that I can broadcast this. So that is overhead for me. These are not expenses that they are expenses that they fit into my business budget. It's an appropriate percentage of my overall revenue, which we'll talk about that too. And there's just some things that are worth spending money on, right? If I want to do certain things like stream to different platforms, I'm going to pay $20 a month for a streaming service. So when it comes to those things, yes, we want to be mindful. We want to make sure we're not overspending, and that if we're going to spend that money, that we're actually using it for a purpose and that it's actually driving us forward in our goals. However, that is not to say that being frugal and being intentional about spending, that doesn't mean that there isn't room to invest in the growth of your business. And so I don't want you to look at spending money in your business as a necessary evil. I just want you to think of it as, in order to run a healthy business, what makes the most sense, right? Just like when you look at your business, at your personal budget, I hope you're not looking at it as, okay, what is the minimum that I can possibly spend here? Unless you've got a debt situation where you really need to put all that extra toward paying off your debt. The goal shouldn't be to spend as little as possible. It should be to steward your money in a wise way so that you're balancing your expenses with other goals, and so that you're not just like experiencing lifestyle creep and just sort of letting your money float around wherever. So I think really the key here is intentionality over trying to be as frugal as you possibly can. Like there's a difference there. So when it comes to spending money on your business, there are a few questions that I want you to ask yourself to determine, is this a wise use of my money? So number one is, what percentage of your revenue are you going to devote for expenses? Now, I really do like the profit first guidelines on this. If you Google profit first percentages, I always say that's a great baseline. It's a great starting point. Like if you have no idea what percentage of revenue is appropriate to spend on expenses, I just think that's a great place to start. And then you can adjust it based on your industry or based on your personal goals. But let's just say that you have a $1 million a year business and you're gonna make 50% of your revenue available for expenses. So that means you have a budget of $500,000 per year. And that turns into, I don't know how to divide by 12, you guys. I need my calculator. That's roughly $41,000 a month. Okay. It's a nice size budget. So we've got your basic overhead, but then let's say that you go, well, but do I need to spend this money? So there's a great distinction. I think I've talked about this before, but there's a great distinction in a book called Double Your Profits by Bob Pfeiffer. And he says, go through your expenses and identify what's strategic and what's not strategic. Like if this expense is actually helping you grow your business, if you can explain directly and clearly and easily how it's helping you to increase your revenue or to increase your profit margins, then that's a strategic expense. And you want as many strategic expenses as possible. So think about it like this. I'll give you an example. And Andrea, that's a great question. I'll answer that in just a moment. But think of it like this. If you're advertising, let's say you're doing Instagram ads and you're getting $4 back for every $1 you invest, are you going to have a static marketing budget? I hope not, right? If you know that you're getting 4 times your return on investment, you're going to pump a lot more money. You're going to pump as much into that as you can, as makes sense for growing your operations and everything like that, right? So that's going to be a strategic expense where you actually want to spend more money. However, if it's something like office furniture, you know what? I wouldn't spend a lot of money on that because you're not getting any value from that. Your customers, if you have like a medical office, okay, they need somewhere to sit. They don't need to sit in $1,000 chair, right? So it's not really adding anything meaningful to the customer experience where it would change whether or not they go back to you. Like I've never heard of someone picking their doctor based on the chairs in the waiting room, right? So it's those kinds of decisions. Be frugal where it makes sense to be frugal, where there's not that like big return on investment. But then on those strategic expenses, really find ways to carve out more space to spend more money on that. And if you're not sure, that's where we call it a business risk. And so that's why you really want to make sure that your spending is a percentage of your revenue, because that'll keep spending overall in check. So if you know you can afford it, if it's spending within that budgeted amount, and you think it's going to be a strategic expense, then I would go ahead and spend the money on it. If you know it's not a strategic expense and you're trying to grow your business, then I would either say find a cheaper option if you can, be as frugal as possible, or say I'm going to go without this expense and see if I really even need it at all. And then if I decide later that I need it, maybe I go for another month and I don't get that subscription or I don't buy this product. Okay, see how you do without it. And then if you're like, oh man, I really think that would help me with my revenue or my profit. Okay, then go ahead and buy it. Or you know what? It's not going to help me with my revenue or my profit in a direct way, but it'll really be a time saver for me. Or it'll allow me to try something and then I can kind of test it over the next 6 months and see if it does become a strategic expense. That's okay to do too. So it's not, you see how we're not thinking in terms of, oh gosh, it costs $50. Should I be spending $50? I don't really know. It's a totally different way of looking at your expenses. It's about how can you get the most out of your operating budget so that it's positioned in a way that you are going to be able to grow, make more revenue, bring home more profit. As a result, you actually get to pay yourself more than if you simply saved that money and paid yourself. That's how we want to focus it. And I don't want you to be afraid of trial and error. Just make sure you can afford the error if it doesn't pan out the way that you want. I think that's the other key is don't invest money thinking that, okay, if it has to work out for you to be financially solvent. Like if you invest $10,000 and you're like, if this doesn't work, I'm in trouble, then don't do it. That's part of the reason why we constrain expenses to a percentage of revenue. That's part of the reason why we want to reserve a portion of profit just to experiment and try things with, because when it does work, it'll help you grow. If you're not certain and it's a risk and it doesn't work, then guess what? You can afford that risk. But if you're saying, I have this opportunity and it's going to cost a lot of money, and if I don't get my money back on it, if it doesn't bring in an ROI, then that's going to be really difficult for me to absorb that cost. Okay, then it's probably too expensive, right? So that's where you really want to just create a healthy boundary around investing in your business. But that doesn't mean don't invest in the growth of your business, right? It just means think critically through those steps of what is my overall, how much can I really afford and have healthy business finances? Um, is it truly a strategic expense or possibly a strategic expense? Or am I just creating more overhead for myself or just spending money in a way that isn't going to drive my profitability? And if you do think that it's going to be a wise expenditure, then make sure that you can afford the risk if it doesn't get the results that you want. So take risks that are within your means. Always be looking toward how you can grow, because that's going to allow you to pay yourself more, and really think about your business finances and your personal finances as two totally separate processes, two totally separate operations that you're managing. Yes, one does affect the other, but the more you can grow your business, the more you can pay yourself. So we've got to live with that tension of, okay, yeah, technically I could take home all this money after taxes, but I'm going to limit my take home to X amount because I have these other goals. And once I reach these other goals, as long as my profit margins are what they need to be, right? It's not just about revenue. You've got to have the profit margins. As long as I'm keeping track of my profit margins, that's going to allow me to increase that income over time, right? If you just are focused on your revenue growth and then taking home as much as you can from that revenue, then your ability to pay yourself is always going to be in flux. It's always going to be up, down, up, down. I don't know how much I can pay myself. But if you are growing your business in a systematic way where you've committed to a certain salary based on how much revenue you can predict, and you have a way to leverage those expenses to grow, then you're going to be able to consistently increase the amount that you pay yourself to. So now you see how we've solved this problem of our business finances and spending on the business is no longer at odds with paying yourself. You're actually thinking about it in a much more strategic way, having healthy boundaries, experimenting with different in ways to invest in your business growth that are going to be affordable. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to take risks. That's part of growing as a business owner. You're not going to have, 100 batting, I don't know what batting average are, 1,000 batting average, right? But that's not really the goal. The goal is to create margin so that it is financially wise to try different things and to take risks. And then when you get that next level of sustainable revenue, you increase your income, you have a higher operating budget, and that's how you keep healthy business finances and grow and give yourself the capability to pay yourself more. Andrea's got a great question. Is there a budget form specifically for a business? I haven't really seen a good one. Now, QuickBooks Online allows you to create a business budget, but you have to have the $100 a month subscription. So unless your business is large enough to where it really makes sense for you to pay $100 a month for QuickBooks Online, or you have like two different businesses and you really need that capability, I just wouldn't pay that to have that capability. I would just use a spreadsheet, because most of your expenses are probably going to be recurring subscriptions, right? Unless you've got inventory. If you've got inventory, then I would say you need a good inventory system. And that is going to be where I would put some dollars into creating into a good inventory system. But other than that, I would just use a spreadsheet. And I would also use the Profit First system, where you have a checking account that is just for your business expenses. So for example, if you have $1 million company and 50% of your revenue is for expenses, then every month or every 2 weeks, you're going to go into that revenue account and transfer 50% of that money into your operating account. That way, you have boundaries around how much you can spend. So you've created those guardrails, that accountability to not overspending. And then on your spreadsheet, you can keep track of, what are you wanting to spend money on? And then assuming you should have a bookkeeper. And so that's going to show you each month, you can see, all right, this is what we planned on spending. This is where the money actually went. And let's kind of see where we might want to readjust. What's happening to our profit margins. Did we spend more in a category than we had intended to? Why is that? Is there something that we can do to be more cognizant of that, or to reduce that, or do we want to redirect some funds? So those are the tools that I think that I would use. I will say I had a client who use the Every Dollar app. So all they did was relabel the categories, and she connected her business operating account to the Every Dollar account, so that she could, even though she had an accountant who was like doing her books and stuff like that, she wanted to really be in touch with those expenses. And so she basically did a separate tracking system on her own, where she set everything up on Every Dollar, just like she would a personal budget, but just for her business expenses, and just relabeled everything. And then as those expenses came out of her operating account, she would track them. And so, do I think that's a little bit extra? I mean, a little bit, but if getting control of your business expenses is something that is really that linchpin that's going to take you to the next level, or it's been a real struggle, then I think that is a great way to be more aware of where your money is going, and to make sure that you're limiting how much you can spend. So I hope that helps, but send me a DM if I can provide any further guidance on that. All right, you guys, this is it for Simple Business Stewardship right now. I do have a master class that I've recorded that goes more into expenses, more into how you can be profitable and thrive in 2023. And so check that out. It's on my LinkedIn page. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.